We all can feel it. The anxiety has started to rise again for Auburn football recruiting, worrying when we haven't gotten a lot of the recruits that we thought that we might have been in line for or were 100% ready to have their commitment come on in, and it hasn't happened. But thankfully for this one that we're going to be talking about today, hopefully it'll alleviate that anxiety a little bit and make you happy to be celebrating another recruitment. Today, on Friday, August 12th, JC Hart has committed to the Auburn Tigers. So for these commitment videos, we always like to talk about it a certain way. We obviously want to tell you a little bit about the recruit that just committed to Auburn. We also want to talk a little bit about things that you may want to know about him in terms of what you're getting in the type of player that has decided to join the program. We're also going to dive into what it means for, obviously, this recruit deciding to come to Auburn, but what it means for Auburn, for them to be a part of our Auburn family now, what it means in the present and in the future. Right now, let's talk about the commitment itself. Like we said, committed on this Friday, August 12th, from Lochapoka High School. Now, depending on how you look at it, he's technically from Lochapoka or technically from Auburn. They're basically one and the same, right next to each other, separated by like 20 minutes or so, if even that. Depends on where you go in the actual Auburn, Lochapoka area. He decided to come to Auburn over some SEC schools, Mississippi State and Vanderbilt, and also UCF. Stole one from Gus Malzahn there. He wasn't able to get them from us. So a little bit more information about JC Hart. He's about 6'2", 175 pounds. We'll call that roughly. That's probably an average of all the different sites that kind of give you the information out there. 6'2", 175 pounds. When you look at him, pretty decent size for what would be considered a cornerback. I'm just calling him a defensive back because as these guys get into the system, their bodies change, their styles change, what they could actually be utilizing, their opportunities change. So he's a defensive back, but you can probably expect him to be utilized what he is now as a cornerback. And you got to thank Zach Etheridge again for being the man on the recruiting trail and doing his job, not just recruiting overall, but recruiting at home and getting these local guys to commit and stay with Auburn. Two other things about this guy. He was a Big Cat Weekend guy. And when he was here, he was just showing a lot of signs that he was all Auburn, which was kind of, I guess, maybe a little bit worrisome for fans too when they saw that this guy looked like he was all Auburn and just was taking his time. But you got to give these guys time. I mean, they're making huge life choices and they want to make sure that they're making the right choice for them. And thankfully, obviously, he's decided that is going to be here with Auburn. Another thing to know about this guy, a lot of people see already NFL talent in him. Does it make you think of a certain player who just left that was maybe a little bit, we'll call him under-recruited or undervalued in the recruiting process? I won't say his name, but you're probably thinking of him right now. Normally, I like to provide you guys with a little bit of stats from either their junior years or a little bit earlier than that. I couldn't really find any solid information on my quick searches for that, so we're not going to really discuss that here, but I think it's pretty evident from a lot of people's opinions that are now being shared in the expert field and in the recruiting field that this is a quality guy in terms of talent that we're getting. And we're going to talk about it in terms of the recruiting cycle right now, 2023. So overall, 7 total commits now for the Tigers. They've started gaining a lot of momentum over the summer. This is the 4th defensive recruit, the 2nd defensive back, if we want to take a little subset of this as well and say the 1st cornerback, which is what we pretty much all expect him to be by the time he puts on the pads for Auburn. If you haven't forgotten, because it was a while ago, the 1st defensive back to decide to come and be part of the Tigers recruit class was Terrence Love. Now, he's going to be a safety, but if you want to just look at it in defensive back, a set, that's the guy that you also include into that. Now let's talk about his future, what it means for him when he gets to be part of the Auburn Tigers. Obviously, assuming that he stays committed, that he signs on the dotted line, that there's no other academic issues or anything like that. But let's just assume everything goes as planned from this point forward. What does it mean for his future? Always want to caution you to plan on these guys redshirting, which means you still get to see them. 4 games, I believe, is without wasting their red shirt. So you will get to see this guy play at some point, especially being a defensive back guy. They use these guys a lot in special teams. And frankly, if he's already this decent size of a prospect, I would expect to see him a lot on special teams. But frankly, if you look at the defensive backfield, specifically cornerbacks, there's some questions up there. There is some people that probably will leave, but not as many as you'd think. But there's also talent that's kind of waiting in the wind. There could be a lot of opportunities available for him down the line, but it just really depends on what happens. Because right now, Nehemiah Pritchett is really the only one that's expected to leave from Auburn's corner backfield. The other one, Jalen Simpson, who's expected to be the other starter this season, he's a junior. He may leave. He may not, unless he just has an outstanding season. I don't really expect it at this moment. I hope he does. I mean, that's great things for him and for Auburn. But outside of that, there's a lot of other talent that's already been brought in from previous recruiting classes that's getting set up for. What I would expect, frankly, is to see him play on special teams a lot, but also become part of that next wave after this point of cornerbacks, especially, that are going to be utilized at Auburn as a group, either as maybe he's a starter or maybe he's just part of the rotation there, in a very solid rotation. If you think about it, you got Austin Osbury, J.D. Rhyme, who, depending on where you look at, some people think they're going to utilize them in the nickelback set a lot this season, but they're still cornerbacks by their true nature. So if he's going to be part of that group, J.D. Rhyme, Austin Osbury, now JC Hart, I really like that. I like that set that's going to be coming up behind some of our guys that will either be leaving this season or very soon after that point. Lastly, let's talk about a few other storylines about what it means for Auburn and for JC Hart with his commitment. Firstly, something we've already mentioned, the need for patience, especially when it comes to Big Cat Weekend. We've already talked about it a little bit. These guys, they just need some time to think about these things sometimes. And I'm just thankful that he decided to stick with what would seem like was going to be the case all along. So I think this just stresses the need for us all to take a deep breath, be happy for what happens during Big Cat Weekend, and then be thankful when it ends up like JC Hart's story did. And also, as we talked about a lot in some other commitment videos, taking care of your backyard. And this is clearly your backyard. It may not be technically Auburn, Alabama, but we've always talked about this like almost square or triangle, whatever shape you want to use, that encompasses Auburn, that kind of leads up into, parts of Georgia, Montgomery, Phoenix City. And Auburn's already taken care of a lot of those areas in this recruiting class with like Carmelo English, Braden Joyner, and even the running back Jeremiah Cobb out of Montgomery. And so now this is a fourth one. Taking care of your backyard is huge. And you want to make sure you take care of those other pipeline states, which we have already done in Georgia and Florida, and probably going to add to it even more. But another showing here that they are making sure they are not letting these guys, even the ones that may go a little bit under the radar, they're not letting them out of their own backyard. And I forgot one more thing. We're basically defensive back you, especially when it comes to taking guys that were lesser recruited and turning them into NFL talent. Roger McCreary, that's who we were hinting at earlier in the video, is case in point for that. Is he going to be Roger McCreary? Probably not, but he can be the best version of JC Hart. And maybe we'll be talking about him in the first round or second round of the NFL draft very, very soon. If you enjoy this type of content, please do help support it by smashing that like button. And if you want more from us, be sure to hit the subscribe along with that notification bell so you don't miss any uploads or live streams. Check out the ways to help support our content listed in the description, such as becoming a channel member here by hitting that join button below, or head over to patreon.com to hang out with us over at the Booster Club there. Thank you for tuning into the E2C Network, where we share the whole of the Auburn experience. War Eagle.